Let's take you to KwaZulu-Natal now, where Premier Nomusa Dube-Ncube is expected to announce a relocation program. This is for KwaZulu-Natal residents who were displaced by the floods in April. Scores of families are being temporarily housed at shelters after their homes were swept away in the floods. This live update now is from SABC News reporter Bongani Gema, who joins us. Bongani, thank you for your time indeed this hour. So have you spoken to some of the displaced families? Because we've seen, some of these families living in community care centers, and they've complained about insufficient accommodation in KZN. So how is the placement process going now?
Well, Mkolisi, where we are is one of the mass shelters that were created after the floods. We understand that over 100, were set up here in the city of eThekwini. Earlier on, I spoke with Lennox Bambaso from the office of the Premier, who said now remaining over just a little over 70 of these mass shelters, Mkolisi. Just after 5 months now, Mkolisi. No, I'll take you back, Mkolisi. I remember we once did an insert with a community who were also housed. They were in a church, so they were frustrated that the process of relocating them was very slow, and they were saying that for them who were housed at these private buildings, for them they were not getting the attention that they required. So I mean, that was not the sentiment only from that community, but many of these people who were sheltered at these mass shelters were also very frustrated. So today we understand that the commencement of their relocation is going to start today. Speaking to Lennox earlier, he said that the people were given three options, Either they were accepting building material from the city to go, and build in the land where they have identified themselves, or wait to be placed in a temporary shelter by the KZN provincial government. You understand, because that to date over 1,000 TRUs, those are temporary residential units, have been built in Mkolisi, but many families remain, including this community that is behind me, Mkolisi. So today, what is going to happen once the Premier Nomusa Dube-Ncube, who's going to be accompanied by the MEC for Human Settlement, Dr. Ntutsugu Mahlaba, and the Mayor of eThekwini, Mkolisi Kawunda, they are going to be taking these specific residents who are housed at this hall to what they call mass emergency shelters, Mkolisi. That is where they are now going to be housed for a year, where now they're going to be waiting for permanent structures that are going to be built for them. This community is housed here in Westville because they were displaced from informal settlement just near Westville. So the issue was that Mkolisi, removing or placing these communities in proper land was a problem, because they did not want to move far away from where they had been previously housed, because you understand that where they were before, they were closer to their places of work, they were closer to their children's schooling. So in order to place them in proper places, you have to return them to at least closer to where they originally were. So this community is going to remain here in Westville, but the issue was that in order to place them permanently in this community, they have to have proper infrastructure. So the infrastructure that they're going to be getting here is going to be a multi-story building where each family is going to get their own units, which is going to be a proper housing, permanent housing for them going forward. But for now, what's understand is that once the Premier and his delegates arrive here, they're going to be taking this community to those emergency mass shelters. This is not only the residents who are going to be moved to these emergency mass shelters. After this, other communities are going to be moved, because, as I said earlier to you, many of them still remain here in eThekwini. Understand that many of these mass shelters that were built after the floods, hundreds still remain here in the city of eThekwini. So I think the work is still, more work still needs to be done in Mkolisi.
So Bongani, indeed, I remember that insert you just touched on right now, and we've seen over the past few months, even after the floods had happened, on most occasions, some of the people that were displaced had raised genuine concerns. If it was not shortages with food there in these temporary shelters, it was clashes with some of the owners of these shelters. So what is the sense of some of the families that you've spoken to about the move right now? And also don't know how you're standing there logistically, and if you're able to perhaps give us a sense of what's actually happening inside the building behind you right now.
Okay, I'll ask my colleague Nomhle if she can dismount the camera so we can move inside Mkolisi, because when you got here, Mkolisi, what we saw here when we got here is that most of the people housed here are women and children. There are a few men in Mkolisi, but many of them are women and children. I did try to get a word from some of them, but they said they are waiting first to hear from the Premier what she's going to be bringing for them before they can have a comment, because you understand, Mkolisi, 5 months, is a very long time without a proper place to stay with you, and only just you and your family staying here. I remember during the incest that you spoke about, the women were raising issues that, their children are now scared, to take a bath freely. They are scared to go to the toilets because there are people who they do not know, staying with them. There are also men who are housed with women and children. So that was another issue. You mentioned the issue of food. I remember that family, the community that we did, they were saying that they have run out of food because they were relying on Good Samaritans. They were relying on the church. And the church was saying that they cannot house them anymore because they've run out of funds. So they were saying that they plead with government to remove them and find, not just to remove them, to find for them a proper place to stay so they can continue with their lives. So I guess Mkolisi, it's going to be the same sentiment here in Mkolisi. I think arriving is out. Okay, it's not the Premier. This was the Premier arriving, but I guess the sentiment is going to be the same here in Mkolisi once we do get a word for them. But I guess hearing today that they're going to be moved to this is because it's not a permanent shelter again in Mkolisi. Where they are going is also a temporary shelter for a year until their permanent structures are up to date in Mkolisi. So I think it's still going to be a very long haul for them, but I think getting a place where they can have freedom with their families is going to be a relief for them in Mkolisi.
All right, Bongani Gema, thanks very much indeed for that update. Let's touch base, of course, once the MEC gets there, and also, once you're able to perhaps also give us a better view from inside as well, so we can also maybe just, get a sense in terms of what is actually happening inside the building there. Bongani Gema there speaking to us there. Thanks very much for that update.